Hello and welcome to the Invictus IRL Realistic Performance League. Tonight you're joined with not Malc and Tim as a little bit of a backup. Sadly they can't make it tonight. I'm joined in the commentary box for the first time. Sab, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. It's good to be alongside you this evening. We are live for the Canadian Grand Prix in the Invictus Performance League race. See the guys are just about to ready up now, and I'm sure it's going to be something a bit different compared to last night with the guys in the performance-based cars. And yeah, it should be an exciting one with a mixture of F1, F2 and F3 guys in here. So it's interesting how they get on. As we see the countdown is now starting. We'll be moments away to find out if we're going to even get a wet race, wet qualifying. We were fingers crossed last night personally that we were going to get one last night, but unfortunately it was pure dry. So tonight might throw in something like that. But last night, as you well aware of being racing in there, it shows it's a tricky track round here, isn't it, to race round, and getting your strategy right. And if you don't quite look after your tyres, it can be a real hard track to master.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, I can say I was very pleased to see that it wasn't raining last night. But I see what you mean. I think to watch it would be quite interesting to see get some rain. It's definitely one of those tracks where you do see quite a variety in terms of the weather forecast. And no, you're absolutely right. It's one of the real few tracks where in a 50% race, it's quite open in terms of strategy. You can do the one-stop, sort of go soft to hard, or maybe even medium to hard if you want to look after those tyres a bit better. Or you can do the two-stop. I'm sure we'll see a lot of guys. We saw them do that last night on Monday night. A lot of guys favouring the two-stop. If it's a completely dry race, soft, medium is very good. But I'm sure all these guys are pretty pleased to see. Looks like it's going to be full sunshine, at least for qualifying. And once again, going back to the tyres, it's really easy to lose, particularly the rear tyres. I find, of course, there's quite a lot of traction. And of course, coming out that hairpin as well, and saying there's DRS, two DRS zones around here, coming out of turn 7, that little back straight. Got not much of an overtaking zone, but we have got a DRS zone, and of course, coming out of a hairpin, turns 10 into the chicane, the Wall of Champions chicane. Of course, probably your best overtaking. 3 DRS zones in fact, because we've also got the DRS coming into turn 1 as well. But who have you got your eye on so far then for qualifying, Sab?
Well, it's going to be interesting. You've got Jos. He's out there, last time winner, first win of the season for Jos. He's coming out there on a set of hard tyres, and the Williams at the moment is the first one to hit the track. So I imagine going out there on a set of hards, he'd be lucky to just get a feel for the track and maybe set a bank lap, see how he gets along. And you wouldn't be surprised to see him putting in 1 or 2 laps. So I'll keep an eye on Jos at the moment. But it's one of those tracks in qualifying I found especially tricky here. It's very easy to invalidate round here, and I noticed last night quite a few people, including title favourite Gamer, even managed to get a lap invalidated. So one track, if you do invalidate, you're going to really put the pressure on yourself to perform.
Absolutely. See, particularly the corner I find very difficult, just seeing Josh there coming through the chicane of 8 and 9 in his Williams on those hard tyres. It's a corner you can get away with in terms of corner cutting in the race. Become qualifying when you're going through with quite a lot of speed. It's a very quick right, and you get a lot of power very, very early on that left. But if you just go on the curb just a little bit too much, the game will invalidate you, and I'm sure a lot of these guys will be very wary of the track extension limits come this final chicane here. You want to get as close to the Wall of Champions as you can, but you want to cut as much of the first right curb as you possibly can to really open up. And I think Jos might have been perhaps the first victim of that, because it looks like he's invalidated coming out of that chicane. Of course, when you do invalidate, not only does it invalidate the lap you're on, the lap after as well. So that might be a bit of double pain there for the Williams driver.
Yeah, it definitely is. I was just looking at the track map and it is all red, so unfortunately for Jos, it's just going to be a sighter lap for him, as we've got a yellow flag in Sector 1, I assume just to allow some of the guys on a run to get through. I'm currently now moving on to Hulkenberg, who's got a win this season in this league. He's in the Renault tonight, and he's out there on a set of softs, so you imagine he's going to be going for it straight away. He's started off the early parts of this qualifying pretty well. He's going to keep it on track. I always find this. Oh, there you go. I put the jinx right on Hulkenberg, and unfortunately, just slightly cut corner there, and Hulkenberg has also invalidated. So, just proving this a very early stage how tricky it is to invalidate round is Hulkenberg then clatters the wall there. I wouldn't be surprised if he picked up any wing damage doing that. So, yeah, this track is really hurting people early on.
Well, one man looks like he might get a lap done, and possibly the first man to get a lap time on the board is Ryan Mack in the Alfa Romeo for tonight. It's speaking with earlier, I think he's struggling a little bit, but he does do a 10.1, and as I'm sure as a banker, you want to try and improve on it a little bit. Of course, teammates with Charlie tonight as well. I'm sure Charlie will be very competitive as well, going from 15th to 4th, and probably one of the drives of the season in the Williams come Monza last week in the pouring rain, the wet to dry. Around the Italian Grand Prix, and certainly did a very, very good job indeed, and I'm sure he wanted to build on that tonight. And of course, had a good result as well yesterday night, coming 5th in the Invictus Equal League F1 as Scott crossed the line at 9.9, but he too has invalidated, and I think this could be quite a theme, and not just a theme for qualifying, Sab. I think we could be seeing quite a lot of penalties come the race. Yeah,
definitely, and another guy who's just invalidated his FPL Charlie in the Alfa Romeo. FPL Charlie was looking nice early on, but again, very similar to Hulkenberg, just slightly cut that corner, and straight away the steward said, no, we're not having any of that, and invalidation for him as well. So at the moment, Sam Fitto is at the top of the standings with a 109.3. Meg Luppy, he's up there as well in the Haas car with a 109.7, but Nitro teammates with Sam is up there in the Mercedes with a 109.6, and Nitro in the chat, what we normally have in the race thread, is saying he's trying to support Sam the best he can in the pursuit of the Constructors title this season. He knows Sam is the quicker guy, and if he can score as many points as he possibly can to try and bring in that Constructors, then he knows he'll have helped his teammate. But at the moment, it's a first and second for that team, so a good start. But many people, as you can see, looking down the order with one lap on those soft tyres, but no time set. So frustrating start to life here in the qualifying. As we see Lozak in 5th place. He's done 2 laps on those hards with a 1:11.078. But I imagine these times will start to tumble later on.
Absolutely, of course, 3/10 of a second gap for Sammy Papito in that Toro Rosso as 1:09.3. So a very, very comfortable bank lap, and I'm sure it'll take a little bit of confidence to just see Cryptox there in Renault putting himself into P5 of 10.9 there. So again, he's got himself a bank lap, and of course, all these guys who have got their bank laps in without invalidating, just taking the pressure off themselves just a little bit, and perhaps putting the pressure on the likes of Charlie, Hulkenberger, Scott, Scopefielder as well. He knows that he's very much the main title rival to Samu in the Drivers' Championship, but he knows he's got quite a task on his hand. You can see Samu in the Toro Rosso, and I'm pretty sure I'll be fancying the Toro Rosso over the Williams for this race, and certainly the next one comes Singapore next week. And but he's got plenty of time, but he knows he's going to have to try and get the absolute maximum out of Williams, and seeing his title rival go provisional pole is certainly not the thing he wants to see right now. But I'm sure he'll be hoping for quite a few people to try and take a few points off him. And so I'll just look further down the grid. I think lots of people in the pit lane. I think we just have, looks like still quite a few guys on hards. I'm just wondering, Sab, if these guys who are doing these first banker laps on hard tyres, could they potentially be looking at the medium to hard strategy for qualifying in a race? Because that could be quite a solid strategy around here if you look after your tyres as well.
Yeah, definitely. I would not be surprised to see some of those guys potentially try that, because these soft tyres, if you're not great at looking after tyres, I for one am definitely one of those guys, you can find yourself really struggling around here and falling way down the order very quickly after 4, 5, 6 laps. So that could be definitely an option. And as you can see, Lozak has already done 3 laps on those hard tyres. He's coming into the pits now in his racing point, currently sat in 5th, but we are starting to see some of the guys now coming back out for another run. Scott Bugner, Hulkenberg, Roy Boy, and Simon Palmer as well, all coming out for their next runs. And this next run for those guys, they've already been out on soft tyres. This is crucial, because if they don't get themselves a lap in now, it's all going to be the pressure on towards the end of this qualifying to at least get some sort of lapping, because otherwise you could find yourself starting at the very back of the grid, and that's the last thing you want to be doing. Even if you've got a stronger car around here, it's still going to be tricky for them to make their way through the pack.
Yeah, of course, and of course, even though it is it can be kind of labelled as a bit of a DRS train, it's not always such an easy overtake round here, in all truth, as Spud's on a lap here, and it's just stuck behind one of the McLaren drivers. He might get a pretty nice tow from him. I'm sure he hopes he doesn't get too much trouble there come that final chicane there. It goes up to P7 on 11.8, so I'm sure he'll be fairly impressed with that level of improvement. But just going back to saying, even though it's a very much a DRS train, it can be a little bit difficult, especially if you are in a said train. If the car in front of you has got DRS and the car in front of him's got DRS, it can be very difficult to make up ground. So qualifying is really, really, really important. And I think we might even have one of Mercedes just having a little yellow flag in sector 1. I think he was just getting out the way or maybe made a mistake there. But just see Scott Buckner now in the Toro Rosso, and of course he knows he didn't have the greatest qualifying session last night, come Monday in the F1 Equal League, and didn't quite manage to get his bank collapse all the same. But he's going out on a set of soft tyres now, and I'm sure he'll be looking to really try and get a really nice competitive lap time in. Right now, of course, his teammate, at least for this evening, I suppose, in the second Toro Rosso, Samuel Pepito, 1 minute 9.3, so he knows he can get at least that time out of his car. And also coming down the back straight now, coming into the final turns of 13 and 14, try and mount the curb as much as you can, open the rear wing of DRS. He hasn't validated, so at least he will get a time on the board, but he does at 1 minute 9.7, so I'm sure he's definitely feels he's got time to gain there. But I mean, at least he's taken that bit of pressure off him as Roybal now across the line, 1 minute 9.5, so that's a very competitive lap time for the Haas driver.
It was. I was just riding on board with Roy Boy, and he did a nice lap there, and it propels him up to second place. I was just keeping an eye on Hulkenberg as well, and Hulkenberg has fallen foul to the track limits again in that Renault. Unfortunately for Hulkenberg, it was towards the end of the lap, and he invalidated. So that is another invalidation for him, and he's currently finding himself in 15th without a time, with just over 8 minutes on the clock. So pressure is on for the Renault driver at the moment, and I believe FPL Charlie has also suffered through track limits as well, so some of the well-known quicker guys in this league are finding it tough at the moment.
Yeah, it's just right on board of Charlie there. He actually set a time which would have put him provisional second on the grid, so it was clearly a very good lap for the Alfa Romeo drive, but it was actually just that final chicane, probably the most easiest place to get a track limit extension. It just, I think, just rode that first curve just a little bit too much and validated, and just seeing Schofield, he's put himself up into P8 over 1 minute 10.2, so at least he's got a time on the board as well. It's going to be very hard for him in that Williams tonight. He knows he's just got to try and make sure he doesn't lose his little points to Sam. I'm sure he'd be begging for anyone to go quicker than the Toro Rosso driver right now, as still 3 drivers yet to set a lap time of FPL Charlie, of Energy Dan and Hulkenberg, 2 of those guys in the pits. I'm sure Charlie will come into the pits any moment now, and those guys who looks like those guys who started off putting times on the hard tyres now look like they're beginning to put in times on the mediums. It looks like it's Lozak looks like he's about to set a lap.
Yeah, it does, and I was just also keeping an eye on the second Haas driver, and that's Meg Luppy, and Meg Luppy has found himself up into second place. It was a nice lap from Meg Luppy, and that's put him within touching distance of Sam now. Sam, I don't believe Sam managed to improve on his first banker lap, so Sam still sat there on that 109.3, but Meg Luppy now up there with a 109.424, so at the moment it's second and third for the Haas driver. So Meg Luppy also looking strong this evening. Scott as well, he's up there into fifth after getting his time eventually with a 109.7, but like you say, some of those guys now who's putting laps on those hard tyres, as you can see in the pit lane now, getting those medium tyres fitted. I can see Stephen is already out there in the Red Bull on a set of medium tyres. He's going quicker currently than what he has done, which you would imagine he would have done with a 112 his first lap. Here comes Stephen. Can he keep it clean through the final corner? It's a very hesitant final chicane there for Stephen. He's going to try and keep it as tight to the line as possible. Here he comes across the line, and it is an improvement, but unfortunately for Stephen, I think he lost a lot of time that final chicane, and it's just a 112.0 for the Red Bull driver.
And Lozak now in the racing point crossing line, does a 1 minute 9.6 on medium tyres and only 0.3 of a second off provisional pole on the medium tyres. It was a very, very good lap for the racing driver, racing point driver this evening. It looked like it was purple in the middle sector on those medium tyres, so he's really getting the most out of that racing point. Of course, the racing point we know is traditionally pretty slippery in a straight line, especially with that Mercedes engine, so it could be in a pretty good position to perhaps try and take the Toro Rosso should it come to it, with the Honda engine in a straight line. Obviously these cars with realistic performance tonight, and all having their own different strengths and weaknesses, and all drivers going to try and make the absolute most of all their strengths. We just see Luke Bailey there getting out of the way. He's also on a set of mediums, and Charlie's still sitting in the pits, and so is Energy Dan. Hulkenberg looks to be out on a brand new set of mediums. So even though he hasn't set a lap time, he's not making the jump to the soft tyres. He still has confidence in the abilities that he can get a decent competitive lap time. And of course, you only get 1 set of hard tyres, 1 set of mediums, and you get 2 sets of softs if you've gone for the balanced tyre allocation. But he's negotiated the final corners quite nicely. He's going to put himself into P12, which Of course, doesn't mean quite a great deal because it means obviously starting outside the top 10 you can pick your own tyres anyway, but at least he has got a semi-competitive lap time on the board, and it takes a little bit of pressure off him. He's still got just enough time to come into the pits, I would have thought, and put on a new set of tyres.
Yeah, definitely, and P12 isn't bad. Like you say, it's good to get that lap in. You don't want to find yourselves qualifying at the very back, because that is just a lot of work for anybody to do, even in this format. At the moment, as you can see, there's a lot of people sat there in the pits, but one guy who's not, unfortunately, I've just flicked over to him, and he's invalidated his lap, and that is Ferocious Dan in the Racing Point. Ferocious Dan coming across the line now. He must have invalidated it probably around the second sector, and he crossed the line, unable to improve on his 8th place. But yeah, a few guys still sat there waiting on the clock. Just over 4 minutes left. We've got Spud out there, and Jos also out there on a set of brand new mediums as well, trying to see if they can improve. Jos, like I said earlier, he won last time out. He's in the Williams tonight. Williams, always a tricky. Oh, he almost got that completely wrong at the chicane there, and he had to slam the brakes on and just about got out of it and managed to just get into the pit lane and bail on that. Unfortunately for Jos, that is not going to be an improvement for him, and he finds himself down in 16th place.
Well, Charlie, that P17 is running out of time. He's running out of tyres, I would have thought, to set a competitive lap time, but he's gone purple in sectors 1 and 2. And I was racing with him earlier, a little bit of practice earlier in the day, and he was saying times that is much more than capable of pipping Samu Papito to pole position. And well, he's still going to negotiate this final chicane of turns 13 and 14, going to graze towards the champions, get close to his can, flick open DRS, going to sprint to the line, and where's he going to put him? Only lap that isn't invalidated, and it does go just 2,000 of a second quicker than the Teo Rosso driver, and a very, very much of a pressure lap there. Not the perhaps ideal scenario, leaving it so late to get your first time on the board, but that's a fabulous lap there from the Alfa Romeo driver.
It really is, and he can breathe a huge sigh of relief now, knowing he's not only set a decent lap, but 0.02 of a second faster than Sam. So yeah, the gauntlet is now set for Sam to try and beat that with 2.5 minutes left on the clock. I was just checking in with the other Alfa Romeo driver, that's Rimac, currently in 10th, but unfortunately he is also invalidated. So the moment, the story of the qualifying is there's a lot of invalidations. People are really trying to push as hard as they can, but unfortunately just pushing a bit too hard in places, as we now start to see a lot of the guys within the top 10 coming out to go on their final runs.
Yeah, we'll see just a few guys coming up to the start-finish line very soon as well. I think it was just riding aboard there. I think saying Rimac, I think he'll try and get another lap in. And looks like a yellow flag won the Hasses. He might just be getting out the way, I believe, as Ferocious Dan and the Alfa Romeo. I think that's Charlie coming into the pits. There's Lozak's also. I think he originally he's 1 minute 9.6. He's on the medium tyre, but he fancied a little bit of a try on the soft tyres, but he has invalidated. So you either have to go again, always stick with his medium tyre run. Simon Palmer currently sat in P9, 1 minute 9.7, see if he can improve anything coming up to the final chicane now. Turns 13 to 14, absolutely wrestling the car over the final curves, and he's going to flick open the DRS. It's usually pretty handy in qualifying, and there he goes, and 1 minute 9.4, so just a tenth of a second off provisional pole, and he's moving himself just a few positions there, and onto the second row as it stands. Of course, people still yet to do their perhaps last runs, as Papito's also on an outlap, and I'm sure he'd be perhaps seeing red after seeing his lap time. Stood provisional pole for so much point, such a large point of the session, as Nitrogas now improves on it just by a little bit, and goes provisional pole by 200 of a second. It's getting really tight at the top.
It really is, and Nitrogas using all of that Mercedes power, and it worked to perfection for him. I'm riding on board now with Sam. What can he do? He's gone through the first sector, and he's just about a tenth up in the first sector. So Sam getting it right so far. Can he keep it clean now through this next sector and try and nail it here? Because at the moment he's down in third place. Like I say, he was sat in first place for so long. He's going to head down to the hairpin now. Crucial breaking point down here. Get this wrong and you can find yourself all out of shape, but he's 2.5 tenths up, so Sam really now motoring towards that finish line for that pole position.
is really in a good position, but he's still got to negotiate this final chicane. As we're saying, it's so easy to invalidate and waste. That's a really, really good lap, but he certainly seems to be flying right now, the Spaniard, as he's going to come across the start-finish line just a matter of seconds. Going to try and wrestle the car over the curves once again, get so close to the wall, flicks open DRS. Let's see Scott Bugner applying for the session into P10, and Sampa Pepito does improve by just under 2/10 of a second. He puts himself back on provisional pole, and it does answer the lap time needed to put himself back on pole after, of course, it was betted by FPL Charlie and then Nitrogas, as looks like Roy Boy gets himself back amongst the mix ahead of Simon Palmer, pushes him back down to P6. Hulkenberg looks like he's just on another lap as well, so he's got time to improve his position. He's currently sat on P4 with a provisional time of a 10.7. Stephen, I think, is also on a lap just behind him. He wants to improve his position a little bit. He's in P15 in that Red Bull car. And Stephen had a very good race in Italy, of course, moving up through the positions up into 7th in the end. Hulkenberg does just invalidate on that last corner. What can Stephen do? Is he going quicker than his provisional time? He's sat into P15 at the moment. He has got positions up to grabs if he can take him. It doesn't improve his time, but doesn't improve his position. And I think Wymack just coming into the pits as well. Just looking to see if we've got anyone else potentially on a lap. Meg's getting out the way for someone. He's getting out the way for Lozak. So we'll see what the Racing Point driver can do. He's absolutely flying it over the final curves. A little bit too much for the Racing Point driver, and in fact invalidates. It's interesting to see. It would have been actually professional pole. I'm sure he gains a little bit of time from just maybe resting it a little bit too much. But I think that should be our order, Sab, as Energy Dan doesn't set a lap time in the end, so he's P18. Joss at the back there, of course, our last week's race in a P17. But it was really close qualifying there, Sab. But in the end, it's Sammy Papito in a Teoso Honda. I'm sure a car which should be pretty handy at this and the next circuit, Singapore. And he's made full use of it to put himself in provisional pole.
He really has, and to see his title rival in Schofield down in P8 as well in that Williams, he knows he's got a hefty cushion between him and his title rival. So if he can get a good start at the beginning of this race and build a gap, then he can score some good points over the Williams driver. But Nitrogas, I'm sure, will be a very tricky customer in that Mercedes.
Absolutely, of course. Nitrogas won the first round. Invictus Realistic Performance League in Japan, and hasn't had it all his own way since. But in the Mercedes, he's saying making the most of that Mercedes power, and I'm sure if he's in the DRS zone within that 1 second gap of the Spaniard, come those DRS straights at the start of the race, I'm sure he could be in a good position to make a move. But there is your qualifying order: Simon Pepito on pole, Nitrogas P2, FPL Charlie improves his qualifying up to P3, McLuffy, Roy Boy, Simon Palmer are your top 6. Lozak improves well, Scopefielder in P8, Ferocious Dan and Scott Bugner in P9 and 10. Wymack just outside in P11, Cryptox, Luke Bailey, Hulkenberg, Stephen, Seth Bud, Joss and Energy Jan round out the rear of the grid. And of course we don't know what the weather forecast should bring for the race, but you've got to feel if it's dry. I don't think Lozak improved his time in the end on soft, but you could think he could be a bit of a headache for these guys ahead of him, because I believe he's starting, I think it's P7 it is, and if he is starting on those medium tyres, it's going to go a little bit late. He's got the option of a one-stop available to him if he wants to do it, and we could have to see these guys, say Sammy Pepito, even if he does get quite a clean start and quite good consistent race pace, which we often see from him on a Monday, it could be a little bit of a headache, and these guys who may think they have it easy, it could suddenly cause a real headache.
Oh, most definitely. The key I'd say for Lozak early on is to try and keep with these soft runners and make sure he doesn't lose too much time to the guys ahead, or lose positions either from any soft running guys from behind. If Lozak can keep that momentum, he's sitting really comfortably. Like you say, just doing that one stop, then onto the hard tyres, he can find himself in a really good position. But also, like in qualifying, what's really tricky around here in the race is it's really tricky and easy as well at the same time to pick up penalties for track limits, and we've seen quite a few last night. And another one what's also tricky and very similar to Italy is the pit lane entrance. You can find yourself flying into that pit lane entrance. If you brake wrong at any point, you've got a 5-second penalty slapped on you, and that could really prove crucial. And unfortunately for Hercules last night, he picked up one of them, and it probably cost him the opportunity for a win last night. He did just about try and catch game up, but unfortunately just pushed a bit too hard. But yeah, one thing these guys have definitely got to look for tonight is trying to limit the amount of track excursions they go on, because I can imagine penalties might come into play come the end of the race.
Yeah, especially when you are in such a train of cars and you're all squabbling for positions. You've got to have two eyes facing forward, two eyes facing back. It seems at all times, especially on these opening laps when there's just cars. Such a quick circuit. It's just cars flying everywhere. And there's so many corners where you can easily invalidate, and especially when you're going for an overtake, for example, coming into that last chicane, just because it's so tight, you've got to try and allow space, and sometimes allowing space can mean your corner cut. But I'm sure all these guys will be doing their best to try and keep the corner cutting to a minimum. And of course, the sunshine is out for the race as well, which I'm sure is very much good news to the guys who are qualified at the front and those who are qualified at the back. I'm sure there's probably hoping for a little bit of a mix-up in terms of the weather to give them a little bit more of a chance, but I'm sure they will have their chance. Of course, safety cars are quite often featured around this circuit. It is a street circuit. It is a very fast street circuit, of course, and just over 67 seconds for qualifying usually in the equal performance cars. A little bit over that tonight as just Hulkenberg leading the session. They'll hopefully try and get him back in before the race starts. And of course, if you are new to the league and if you're interested in what we are, of course we are a racing league for the F1 2019 game, and of course the new F1 game coming out later in July. And if you are enjoying what you're liking, you can't wait for the race start and for more. We have the F2 League and F3 League that's brought on Wednesdays 8 PM live on YouTube 8 PM. And of course the Xbox League is streamed on Twitch Sunday nights 9:30 PM. That is at twitch.tv/Invictus Leagues. Of course Monday night, that is Gareth and Sab. That is the F1 Equal League. Monday nights 8 PM. And of course you find us on all the socials: Instagram at Invictus Racing League, Twitter at Invictus RL, Facebook as well, and of course our website where you can find all the Hall of Fame statistics that you could possibly want. News, interviews with the drivers, photo albums, all you like. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you're enjoying it. And I'm just about to get the race all started very, very soon. But turn one can be quite tight, Skype, because it is also so tight. And but also having a chicane to start off with, when you have the inside for turn one, and also then turns into the outside for turn two, we can see cars going side by side, and it could potentially get a little bit messy.
Yeah, it could, and you could easily find yourself tripping up over each other. It gets so tight, doesn't it? It really squeezes the cars in, and going down into that first corner, and on the first lap, you could easily find yourself losing a front wing or getting spun around. So start is really crucial. But for Sam, I imagine he's going to have to keep his eye on that Mercedes. That Mercedes is no slouch. We know how quick a Mercedes is at most tracks on an F1 calendar, so Nitrogas will be wanted to try and put Sam under some pressure, but Sam will know that Nitrogas is his teammate, so will he be asking him maybe, just do us a favour, will you? Let's hold back FPL Charlie and Meg Luppy, and let's run this race our own pace. And if you allow me to stretch off into front of us, see Rymac has left the session also. We hopefully be able to see him rejoin. And yeah, as I say, Nitricus could provide himself as a bit of a rear gunner, as I think we might end up having a lobby reset.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. Of course, we'll try and get these sorted as soon as we can, and of course these things sadly happen. I think that might have been just Hulkenberg just being kicked out of the session there, so we might have to wait just a little bit longer to get this race underway, which is perhaps a little bit more frustrating to probably no one more than Sammy Papito. Of course, when you're on pole position, all the nerves of trying to translate pole position into the win, well, it's going to have to try and keep those nerves bayed for just a little bit longer, and we'll try and get the new session sorted and uplifted as quick as we can as these guys just filter out the session, and hopefully have the new session as we just try and get back into the new session in a minute. So we just allow the admins to quickly create it, and of course have to quickly reform the starting grid. But it does give us a little bit of a chance to at least talk about the rest before we start it, Sab. And of course, as you're saying, Scopefielder down in 8th place. He's going to be really hoping that Sammy Papito has a problem, because he's got the Williams for not just this race but for Singapore as well. We know the Williams is not particularly effective in a straight line nor cornering, so he has got a real car to try and wrestle with for the next couple of Grand Prix. And he does seem to be a bit of he is the closest man to Sammy Papito. He does seem a bit of a sitting duck right now in terms of where he is with the car and his championship position. So he's going to really have to rely on other drivers potentially taking off points off Papito more rather than himself.
Yeah, definitely. And like I was just getting to, Sam will be relying on his teammate to give him a hand here, because if Sam can allow Nitrogash to at least hold some of the cars up behind him to pull away out of that DRS zone, then Sam will have a real strong chance, and Scopefield will be hoping that doesn't obviously happen, and they'll be hoping the likes of FPL Charlie and Meg Luppy can make a jump on Nitrogash as soon as possible. But you can never say never, especially in this league with the performance elements, and Sam knows, even in Toro Rosso, it's going to be still tricky to get that race win. And unfortunately for Scottfield, like you say, he's got that Williams. It's a bit of a boat round here, isn't it? Unfortunately for him, and he's just, I think the best thing he could possibly do is make sure he finishes the race and picks up as little penalties as possible, because he could find himself finishing the race and jumping a few places just based on penalties, and suddenly find himself scoring more points than he probably thought he would be able to. So I think the key for him is to see the race out early on and see what he can get going forward, and then work from there, and hopefully for his benefit he can try and claw some of these points back. But Sam, he's looking very quick tonight, isn't he? So I'd say at the moment it's all favouring him, but like I say, you can never say never, especially around a track like this.
Absolutely, of course, but he is prone to do a mistake. He can be a little bit of a hothead, this Spaniard. He's very, very, very passionate. Of course, we saw him come into contact with the Ferrari driver of Burmeister come Monday night, so he is prone to a mistake, and I'm sure Scopefield would be absolutely praying for a similar mistake maybe tonight, as saying. But of course, I can kind of sympathise a little bit with Scope. I remember yesterday night, similar sort of position. I had my title rival scoring pole position. I was down in 7th, and you do feel hopeless when you're already points behind. And you know that realistically the only best thing you can do is just try and minimise the damage rather than take points off when you need to start taking points off. But Scope's won many championships in Invictus RR, and he knows that the best thing he can do is to try and keep a cool head and try and pick off cars one by one. He hasn't got the car performance underneath him tonight to try and challenge for the win, so he's just got to try and take as many points as he can. And I'm sure this does open the door for other drivers as well. Luke Bailey, Nitro Gas and Scott in their own right are still keeping themselves just about in touch with the championship hunt, and I'm sure if they have a good race tonight, all of them got a little bit of work to do after qualifying. Of course, Nitro Gas set in the second place best position, but I'm sure for the likes of Scott and Luke Bailey, and then they've got a little bit of work to do. If they do want to realistically have a proper chance at the championship, they've got to take points not just off Pepito, but they've got to be getting on the podium and fighting for wins in the last 4 races of the season. Of course, as you're saying as well, with the constructors, it's Sam and Nitro in a very, very not dominant, but they are in a very comfortable spot, and of course Meg and Scope are also in a very good second position, 27 points behind the pair. So it's very much Sam versus Scope for both the drivers and the constructors right now. And just be interesting to see Nitro doing all he can to help Sam in the drivers and constructors, and I'm sure these guys just be ready to get the grid sorted in just a moment. Of course, it does take time, so we apologise for that. It just takes time to reorganise the grid as the qualifying results, as it were. And of course, if we look down to the new allocation as well, I think there's a lot of potential drivers who are probably pretty excited. Nitro Gas in the Mercedes, we know he won obviously in the first round as well. Energy Dan knows he's got to try and make the most of that Ferrari, starting at the back of the grid of course, but he has got plenty of horsepower to try and get him up, catapult him through the field. He did score points in Italy. I think he qualified, finished P9 in the end, so I'm sure he'll be pleased with that. And of course, Stephen as well, he had a very good race in Monza, so I'm sure he'll be also in the Red Bull in Monza as well, so I'm sure he'll be making the most of that the best he can. Pritox and Hulkenberg in the Renaults for tonight, and of course Roy Boy and McLugby, who were both in the racing points in Monza last week. They're both in the Hasses now, and of course they're having a good qualifying session between the pair. And the McLarens of Simon Palmer and Luke Bailey, perhaps hoping for better. Simon Palmer doing quite a good qualifying lap towards the end there. I just saw Lozat do a very nice lap on the mediums as well, and Charlie and Wymack. Charlie doing a very nice time. I'm sure Wymack felt he had a little bit of time left in the bag, but nevertheless he sat in a decent position. And Papito on pole position, and Scott, I'm sure he'd be feeling he could have had a little bit more in it. Like I was saying, Patrick Vella, he was much more capable of a better lap time, but I'm sure he'll just use it all towards his race pace and try and move up through the grid. And as we were saying, in the Williams, we have last week's race winner of Joss, and I'm sure it's going to be an equally painful night for him as well, and Scope wrestling his Williams up into P8, and I'm sure these guys just be ready to go in just a second. And but in terms of action zones we should be looking at, Sab, and this really is a combination of many corners really. So you've got 3 DRS zones here. You've got the first DRS zone of, well, really down the home straight, which can be sort of more used as maybe a defensive mechanism. If you have got the overtake done into the chicane, you can then use DRS to protect your advantage into turn 1. Of course, you've got the second DRS zone in 7 and 8, but I mean, something we saw in Monday night is if you are particularly impatient, we could even see a few brave drivers late on the brakes into the hairpin at turn 10.
You could indeed, and I also, watching last night, I spotted a few people outbraking themselves, which opened the door for people to sneak on through, and then suddenly you find yourself having a nice clean run up towards the final chicane. I noticed last night, especially with you and Charlie, how much you guys utilised the DRS zones and with the overtaking many times. And if you haven't watched last night's race, I certainly urge you to tune in on our YouTube channel and check that out, because there were some great battling between the pair of them, great hard battling but fair in the end, and it just shows you, just between you and Charlie, what you can do with the DRS around you and what capabilities you have doing of overtaking and defending, because you both were defending pretty well, and like you've pointed out, into turn 1 as well, you can defend really well. But also I noticed in the second DRS zone as well, there is opportunities there. If anybody gets that chicane slightly wrong or slightly deep, you can find yourself all out of shape. I noticed TL4 last night also was struggling out of there, and it allowed FPL Charlie to get past as well with the aid of DRS. So with these 3 DRS dissection zones, there is opportunities to work here. You just go all about working out where best to strike and potentially strike well, because if you get it slightly wrong, even if it's not in DRS zone, if you get slightly wrong, you find yourself in those hard concrete walls, and once you find yourself in those walls, as we've seen Sam and Burmeister particularly, it's usually game over, or at minimum a badly damaged front wing, which can really hurt you around here. But the key, I think, with the final few races of the season is the fact that 3 of the last 4 races are track-based circuits. You've got tonight Canada, Singapore, then you're off to Great Britain, but the final one then at Monaco. So even though Sam does have this good lead at the moment, you can never say never at the moment with street circuits, can you? You only have to have a slip or a mistake anywhere on the track, you suddenly lose a front wing, lose a wheel or anything, and suddenly the championship blows wide open for anybody. So at the moment, Sam can't be thinking too much, I'd say, about having one hand on this trophy at the moment, because while ever the street circuits play and there's really hard concrete walls around here, the championship is always going to be in the open, especially if you're going down to the wire into Monaco, where anything can happen around there.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, the concentration levels you need on street circuits are just far and beyond your traditional circuits like Silverstone. And the concentration around here, it's not a little bit get away with it. Of course, the walls and barriers are so close, particularly the Wall of Champions, of course, which is also well documented, one of the most iconic corners in the Formula 1 calendar. So it's so easy to damage the front wing, but it's particularly Singapore and Monaco in terms of the concentration and the capacity you need to be able to drive on the limit. Constantly to try and without damaging your front wing, and to keep your pace up. If you're fighting for a win, if you're fighting for that qualifying perfect lap time, it's really going to test the drivers in these last 4 rounds. As we're just waiting on the grid, and we're very soon get it underway. And in fact, there we are, just 27 seconds until the formation lap, of course, begins. And of course, those drivers who are who are starting P11 and P12, maybe a little bit miffed at the unfortunate events of a restart, because of course the one advantage you do have of starting a P11 and P12 is you have fresh tyres. You get to pick what tyres you want. You have fresh tyres. And of course, a track, as we were saying, where particularly if you're starting on the soft tyres, it can be so hard to really manage them. It seems, because especially the rear tyres, when you overheat them slightly, it can be such a real mission to try and keep them under real racing condition. And so I'm sure those guys who particularly Rymac and Cryptox in P11, P12, maybe a little bit disappointed, I'm sure.
Yeah, I like to go through and just give you an idea normally of who's running what outside the top 10 to see if anybody's feeling a little brave on a set of softs, and nobody's feeling very brave on putting on a set of softs. Everybody outside the top 10 is running mediums except O. Stephen, who is expected to go really long. He's starting on a set of hards on that Red Bull, so expect O. Stephen to, if he can keep a clean race, to go long into this race and cause some trouble later on for anybody who's trying to run a different setup. But yeah, as you pointed out earlier, Lozak is on that medium tyre, so Lozak right in the middle of that top 10. Everybody on the set of softs except Lozak on that medium, so he is definitely one to keep an eye on. As long as he keeps it clean and sticks with those foreign guys, he's got a real good opportunity to cause some trouble for everybody else when they do eventually have to pit. But the car's now heading around the hairpin at the bottom. Sam Pepito not really hanging about that much. He's already down that back straight now. It's just starting to slow up now, and the guy's back to come into formation. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how this race starts.
Actually, I'm sure the Spaniard is tired of waiting, of course, of having the restart, and of course saying just a little bit nerves. No one probably has more nerves than the pole sitting, of course, particularly when you're fighting for a championship. The white-pink helmet of the Spaniard in that blue tail, so I'm sure he's absolutely desperate to get this race underway, and they want to get a good clean start, saying he's got his teammate Nitrogas alongside him, and they'd be hoping Nitrogas does him a favour and sort of protects him from FPL Charlie, because you know FPL Charlie is one of those drivers who will not back out for a move. He will not be afraid to go and try and risk it all for a chocolate biscuit in terms of going for the race win. And to see the final guys just pulling out of the final chicane there, just see Energy Dan in the bright red Prix at the back just pulling in and saying all these guys at the back outside from 11th to P18 on the medium or hard tyres. There could be a real nightmare for these guys inside the top 10 come the second half of the race. But we're all lined up and now just waiting for 5 red lights. It's going to be Pepito versus Nitrogas off the line. It's a short run into turn 1, but it's lights out. It looks to be a very good start from the Tail Roster driver, but Nitrogas is going to pull alongside him already. He's going to hang it to the outside. How hard are they going to battle? It's a slow start for FPL Charlie. He's going to come back down the inside of Simon Palm, goes very deep. It's Samuel Pepito who leads into turn 1. Nitrogas falls behind him in second. FPL Charlie does maintain third. 2 Hasses going side by side coming into turns 4 and 5. Just about holding on to their position. Simon Palmer got a good start, went deep into turn 1, it's down to P6. Lozak has managed to hold on to P7 despite his medium tyres. He's under a lot of pressure from the Williams of Scopefield, who'd be desperate to try and get past medium tyre driver, but it seems to be all very, very, very well behaved so far.
It does, and Meg Luppy actually got a superb start on FPL Charlie, got the jump comfortably, but unfortunately for Meg Luppy, he ran super deep into turn 1, and that allowed the door to be open for FPL Charlie, and FPL Charlie managed to maintain third place. FPL Charlie now trying to put the pressure on the Mercedes driver, and the Mercedes driver at the moment is slightly falling away from San Pepito as we've got a yellow flag in sector 3, and it is Energy Dan at the hairpin.
Not sure if you had any idea what's happened there, but you see FPL Charlie just having a little bit of a look at the Mercedes and Nitrogas, and Nitrogas doing a good job for his teammate. Already a 1.2 second gap has Pepito got to the Mercedes of Nitrogas, but Charlie's going to look to the inside. No, just thinks better of it, and Samuel Pepito has a very, very storming first lap, and I'm sure Nitrogas doing the best to try and keep his teammate behind. Goes a little bit deep on the exit of turn 2. That's going to open the door for Charlie. He's going to go down the inside, come the second chicane. Nitrogas going to try and hang it around the outside. Oh, but he just gets squeezed on the grass and has to drop back, and now he's going to be almost swarmed by the 2 Haas cars who can't decide who wants to have a first bite of him first. Energy Dan gets a speeding in the pit lane, so it's a very poor start to the race from him. The Hasses looks like they finally finished squabbling, but just a little bit of squabbling. But it just potentially cost them a chance at the Mercedes driver. But Simon Palmer as well looking very, very racing in the McLaren. But I think that's crucial for Charlie because he knew immediately it looked like Samuel Pepito has already built up a 1.7 second gap.
Yeah, that is exactly right. Nitrogas had already lost some time as Lozak has tagged Simon Palmer. Oh dear, that was a disaster. Lozak trying something daring, and unfortunately that move was never going to happen. And Simon Palmer has come out the worst there. And Lozak, we thought would be crucial for tonight's race on those medium tyres, has just suffered absolutely badly so far, and he's trying his best to make up for it, and he doesn't appear to have any wing damage. He's banging wheels with Hulkenberg, and as we see Scopefield there, our championship contender, is also into pitch really on. I don't know if he's picked up any damage, but yeah, disaster for Simon Palmer there, and unfortunately Lozak didn't really give him much choices. Yes, Scopefield must have had damage, Scopefield with a wing change.
And riding aboard with Rimac there, as you see, just see one of the racing going around the outside of one of the racing points in the hairpin. I think that's a remarkably brave move, only to find McLaren sort of facing the wrong direction on the apex, stopping him there. So he got two positions right on the outside, so it worked perfectly well for Rimac. Starting in P11, he's on those medium tyres, of course, remember, and he's now up into P6 ready. He's got a little bit of a gap to close if he wants to try and gain on his two on his two Haas drivers, sorry. And of course, he's got Ferocious Dan right on his tail for good measure as well, as the Haas is trying to make inroads into the Mercedes of Nitrogas, who's just about staying with Charlie in the DRS, and of course DRS is enabled this lap. He's got a little bit of change in position between the Renault of Cryptox and Joss, after not a great qualifying, looking like he's trying to make a few positions there. Scopefield also pitting at the end of lap 2 there. I'm not sure if he had a damaged end plate, or maybe he's just potentially looking for some clear airs. Fastest lap of the race for Charlie. He's definitely trying to close up.
Oh dear, Simon Palmer was very, very brave then, and Simon Palmer ended up braking way too late and caught the final chicane. He went to try and do too wide on Joss and Cryptox, and Simon Palmer surely will have picked up track limits there for that move. He was way too brave for my eyes, and luckily the Williams and the Renault drivers seen him coming, and there was no contact or damage there from him. But yeah, superb start for Rimac. He took 5 places into 7th place, but Ferocious Dan got the move done on Rimac. He's now up to 6th place. Rimac looking good right now, and he's the guy to keep an eye on if he can keep a hold of these tyres. But Scott Bugner is really putting the pressure on now in that Toro Rosso.
After such a well-behaved first lap, it seems to be all-out warfare from lap 2 onwards, and Charlie's just outside the DRS zone. He's pulled a DRS gap on Nitrogas, so he's keeping the Toro Rosso driver right on his heels, and I'm sure he'll be trying to get in the DRS zone of that Toro Rosso. But in the DRS zone is Roy Boy, and he's going to try and pass his teammate for this evening of Meg Lugby, and he goes down the inside of the chicane, and Meg doesn't fight it on this occasion. And I'm sure that we're seeing quite a lot of that tonight, and further down the field as well. Looks like Scott is all over the back of Rimac, really going for a move. He's the last of the late breakers, the Toro Rosso driver, but he's quite happy to sit behind the Alfa Romeo on this occasion. Of course, the Alfa Romeo has got those medium tyres, so you have to make a decision. If he wants to get past Alfa Romeo and make the most of his soft tyres, he's going to have to do it sooner rather than later, because he knows that Alfa will be going a little bit longer than him in the race, and of course will be that little bit slower, as see what Roy Boy's pace could be like compared to his comparison of his Haas teammate of Meg Lugby. It looks like he pulled just a little bit of a gap as Ferocious Dan, maybe just getting a little bit of a interesting exit out of that last chicane there. And Scott Buchan is still all over the back of the Alfa Romeo, almost pushing him around this second sector, as Rimac just dipping a wheel in the grass on the exit there as they come up now into the hairpin of turn 10. Will Scott go for a move into the hairpin? I've seen him do it before, but he's now going to think better of it. He's going to try and get the absolute maximum exit he could possibly get. Of course, the Alfa Romeo probably a little bit better in a straight line, but I'm sure he's got those downforce wings turned all the way down to give him the best top speed he possibly can with that Honda engine in tail. So can he get close enough to make a move stick into the final chicane? He's going to think better of it again. Doesn't look to it. Is he going to try and get this good run out of Zlozak? Picks up 3 seconds, and I think he's going to be the first of many this evening. He's ducked into the slipstream. He's going to look to the inside this time into turn 1. He's going to brake late, and it looks like he's got a good move done as Rimac just backs out of it. It's a good move from Scott up into P7.
That was a good move indeed, but for Rimac, he's now under pressure from Luke Bailey. Luke Bailey has got right into this action as well, the McLaren driver. Scott, unfortunately, all that good way early on, has already picked up the 3-second time on only lap 6, so that is a bit of a disaster for Scott. He'll be hoping not to pick up many more of them, as Luke Bailey runs quite deep there into that corner, and that's allowed Lozak to have a run on Luke Bailey. Now Luke Bailey under severe pressure here, and yes, Lozak says thank you very much and gets the position on Luke Bailey. Luke Bailey went from looking to challenge Rimac to losing the place in the space of a couple of corners, so that's a bad lap there for Luke Bailey, but be hoping to try and recover from that.
Yeah, certainly hasn't had it all his own way, Lowe's, that so far, even after seeing pretty good position for the start of the race, but he looks like he's going to try and recoup some of those positions back, as we see Meg Lugby and his Haas teammate of Roy Boy. Oh, I think one of the front wings of one of the Haases has come off. I didn't make out who it was. It might have been, I think it's Meg Lugby. You can just see the front right of his right wing. I think he's missing an end plate. I think he might have just either clipped it on the back of his teammate or clipped it on the outside wall the wall of champions. As Simon Palmer now pits from P12, so he's going to drop a whole host of positions, and he's gone to the medium tyre. So it looks like it's going to be a two-stop strategy for him. Of course, lap 7, this is the kind of lap where we see a lot of these soft runners guys pitting, particularly of course the undercut is quite effective around here. You can really, if you're stuck in a train, you could really gain a whole heap of positions if you can get a bit of clear air and really put some time in.
Yeah, he can. As Lozak's good work, he's gone off the track. Lozak has gone off the track, and I just caught him on the grass. I've seen Luke Bailey going round the outside of him, and that has now brought him into the clutches of Hulkenberg. And Lozak is just having one of those races so far tonight. He's collided with Garza, and as Rimac has retaken the position on Scott, and Scott coming back at him. Scott and Rimac having a real good ding-dong battle here, and Scott now back behind Rimac. Rimac not giving up on this position, but it'll be Rimac who has the DRS to help him defend here. So Scott won't be able to take on Rimac properly, as Scott bails out of it and comes straight into the pits.
And interestingly, FPL Charlie comes into the pit lane as well. It's just, I think it's just hovering about 1.5 to 2 seconds behind the leader of Sammy Papito. So I'm sure he's hoping the undercut is going to work for him tonight. And see quite a few drivers coming to the pits, and a lot of them putting on those medium tyres. So it looks like they are favouring that two-stop strategy. And no takers, it looks like, so far on the medium to hard or the soft to hard strategy. Of course, the soft to hard can be particularly grueling on those last few laps on those hard tyres, and the hard tyre can be quite a bit slower. But you can make it work if you are good on your tyres and you are very, very consistent, and you have that little bit of clear air. As Lozak, of course, he now pits probably a change of front wing as well for him. He looked like he had absolutely nothing left off that Racing Point end plates. Both sides completely damaged, and so they're going to be a slow, long stop. He's put on a set of soft, so he's going to have to pit at some point again as well. So it's going to have to do a lot of redemption to try and make up what was looking pretty promising. As we'll see, looks like FPL Charlie's come out, and he's going to make the most of this undercut, because he knows Sam Papito probably is going to come into the pits this lap, but he's had a little bit of traffic. Looks like Charlie's got past the Renault or Cryptox, but that's probably not ideal, and it certainly won't be hoping that the Renault comes back past him, because he is in that DRS zone, the Renault. If he has got good straight line speed, he could come back at it. It looks like Charlie has got quite a good exit, as the Terrosa driver does now pit.
Yeah, I was right on board with Charlie as he come out of the pit lane, and that Renault car just got in front of him as he exited the pit lane, and unfortunately for Charlie, did hold him up a little bit. But here comes Sam. Where is this going to put Charlie? Sam coming out of the pit lane now. Is Charlie going to get the undercut done? Sam just about holds it, and I believe if FPL Charlie wasn't slightly held up by that Renault driver, Charlie may have been even closer to Sam. But he has brought that time down, because it was around 1.8 seconds, wasn't it? And it's now 0.8 of a second. What's going to help Charlie now is that Hulkenberg, the other Renault driver, is holding up Sam, and this is allowing Charlie to reel in the Toro Rosso driver. So this is now starting to benefit Charlie. So that slight hold up from the other Renault driver is now working in his favour, because Sam Pito is right in his grasps now.
I'm sure Charlie is all over the back, and he might even think about having a move. This I've got a much better exit at that last sequence of corner. He's going to go side by side, and it's Papito going super deep, almost going in the back of the Renault, but he fends off the Alfa Romeo driver forcefully into the hairpin. Now going to come down the back straight, and of course the innocent Renault of Hulkenberg. I'm sure he probably realises he's got the net first and seconds car all over behind him, as Sammy Papito looks to the inside, but he thinks better of it. Of course, he knows it is a long race, 35 laps around this circuit. Of course, 2.71 miles long each lap. But Papito's going to go down the inside. And looks like Charlie as well is going to make the move on the Renault driver. He's going to try and stick with the Toro Rosso. Toro Rosso, just losing it slightly, a little bit of oversteer halfway round the first corner. But they both have negotiated at Renault. Crucially for Charlie, he hasn't got the Renault lodged in between them, as they're fast up the race from Scott. He's very quick on these medium tyres. As now Lozak now does 11.7 on the soft tyres. He knows he's got to make a lot of ground up, but we've got a real fight for the lead now. This undercut has really brought Charlie into play.
It really has, and we've got the opportunity now. I've seen a real great battle between the pair. Now Charlie will be able to full-on attack Sam here, because Sam won't have the comfort of DRS from a car ahead. So Sam is going to have to defend with all his might. He's going to have to nail this hairpin here. If he gets this slightly wrong and Charlie nails it, suddenly Charlie is going to be all over the back of that Toro Rosso. Sam looks to have negotiated well, but here is crucial. Sam, you'd be thinking he'll have saved all his DRS. He'll be fueled to the max to try and defend as much as he can. Charlie It's a bit away from the Toro, so he's not going to be able to attack into this hairpin, but it's all about the entry and the exit into this hairpin here. Can Charlie get it right? And he does get it right. He's much closer to Sam now. Can he get the move done? Sam defending, keeping the car as far left as possible, but Sam, for the moment, he is just clinging on to what will be provisional first place once the cars ahead do come in. But Sam under massive pressure at the moment from the Alfa Romeo driver.
There's a super move going on here, potentially from Scott and the Haas of Roy Boy. Scott going around the outside of turn 1, gave him the inside for turn 2. They're still side by side coming out of turn 2 into the chicanes of 3 and 4, but it looks like it's just about got the move done on the Haas driver. He's really making up ground on his medium tyres. He looks far more confident on that Toro Rosso on the medium tyres. Still got a little bit of positions to find. If he wants to try and catch up with Sam and Charlie, it might already be a little bit too far away for him. But he's really making up ground as Charlie almost pushing the Toro Rosso into turn 10, and Pepito not very wise to it as he's taking that extra wide line to really maximise his exit. He knows Toro Rosso potentially not usually the fastest car in a straight line, and he knows that Alfa Romeo is hunting for him. And of course, just seeing on the previous lap, on this lap as well, Charlie's rear light there flashing. Of course, that usually means he's saving a bit of VOS. So it could be a little bit of team tactics maybe going on here for Charlie, just biding his time, maybe just saving a little bit of fuel, saving a bit of battery behind the Toro Rosso driver for now, and maybe just picking his moments, maybe just planning for a move, not on this lap, but maybe a lap or two further down the road. You want to try and have as much fuel and as much battery as he possibly can, so when he does get that move done on Toro Rosso driver, he could potentially try and fly away. But it's going to be interesting again. What's going to be another curveball for these two is they are quickly catching Rimac and Luke Bailey, who are on the medium tyres and probably pitting very, very soon, but they could catch him before they reach their first pit stop.
Yeah, and you would hope Sam doesn't get caught up behind them pair too much, that it allows Charlie to try and send one down the inside. You'd imagine it's just about a second off of Luke Bailey. If he can claw that in, he can just get a DRS off Luke Bailey to allow him to defend from Charlie. I was just looking further down. Meg Luppy got the move done on Sam Palmer, but Sam Palmer once again has had to pit in, and he's come back out on a set of hars that puts him all the way down into 17th place. As we see Roy Boy and Cryptox now swapping positions. Roy Boy up to 8th place, but Cryptox not giving up on it, and this has also allowed Ferocious Dan as well to get the move done, and Ferocious Dan reeling in Roy Boy as well. Surely he's not going to try one round the outside there. That would have been very brave.
Charlie's going for a move around the outside of turn 1 on Papito, and he's got it done around the outside. He's saying he's saving batteries, and he just shuts the door on the exit on the inside of turn 2. It goes around the outside of Toro Rosso driver there, and he left the door wide open, and well, Charlie took it, and I know how that feels because he did exactly the same thing to me last night, and seems to have perfected that move, and he's made a bit of a signature thing of it, and he's caught him and passed him just before he's reached the traffic of the McLaren driver of Luke Bailey, and now Sam Pepito is for the first time doesn't effectively lead this Grand Prix, and you see Luke Bailey just going a little bit deep there, and he knows he's just a sitting duck for these guys. He knows he hasn't got the tyres to really fight these guys, so they come down into turn 10. Charlie wants to get the move done very early, and we'll have to see what does Sammy Pepito do. He's going to stick behind the McLaren for now. He's going to try and make it patient, and Charlie should have DRS and he does indeed. So he does have DRS, and it's like Pepito just dropping back a little bit now. It looks like maybe not favouring these medium tyres as much as that Alfa Romeo driver.
What a battle we've got here. Scott seems to be the one at the moment to watch as, oh my god, I thought there was cars going to be off track for a second there. It was absolutely crazy. Scott, I don't know how they all survived that, but Scott does benefit from it in the end. He does get past the Hulkenberg of the Renault driver, and Scott now up into P5. Remember, I believe Scott does have a 3-second time as well, and he's also got Roy Boy for company. Scott now is 3.7 seconds behind the next target on his list, and that'll be Nitro Gash in the Mercedes. But as you see there, Roy Boy just behind Scott has also picked up a 3-second time pass. Scott, as always, like I often see him in racing, he always provides plenty of entertainment.
He's certainly doing that tonight, and of course now he's got to he's had had to look all eyes forward in the last few laps, but he's got no cars ahead of him now. He's got 3.6 second gap to Nitrogas ahead, and I'm sure he'll be looking to claw that back. But right now he's going to have to look over the rear wing of his Toro Rosso and have to look right at the back of Roy Boy. See Simon Palmer picking up another 3-second time penalty there. It's not been a good evening for him so far. Of course, getting spun around at the hairpin by Lozak in the early laps of this Grand Prix. And Scott, if he can get a good exit out of the hairpin, but that Haas is very, very, very close. And of course, the Haas with the Ferrari engine, of course, got a racing point as well. The Mercedes engine behind him should be pretty good in a straight line. Looks like further back we've got Meglubby and Cryptox just swapping positions as they'll just go back and ride the board, see if can Scott halt this Haas attack for just another lap at least. And looks like it's got just about enough speed to keep him ahead into turn 1. And of course, they're interesting in between Papito and FPL Charlie, just hovering about 9/10 of a second to a second. It's really nip and tuck, and I'm sure Sam will be trying desperately to make sure he doesn't lose that DRS. He does seem to be, he has got a lap fresher tyres than the Alfa Romeo drive, but it does seem to be struggling just a little bit more.
He does, but what would you do in Sam's position right now? Because I'd be looking at the standings right now. I'm Sam. I'm the leader of the championship. I see one of my closest rivals, Scopefielder, down in 13th place. Would you play it sensible here and just allow Charlie to go off there and lead this race if he wishes, and focus on just picking up these points? He's got his teammate right behind as well, so at the moment they're scoring huge points as a constructor, and Sam also scoring big points over his title rival. So for me at the minute, I would play it sensible here. Yes, he's losing time to Charlie at the moment, but why try and push for something when you've already got a big gap over your closest rival?
That's a very good point. Of course, one thing maybe you look to try and do is try and get back at Charlie to what he did to him. Maybe try and undercut. Oh, to see Roy Boy going all opposite lock into the apex of turn 1 and just pushing maybe that little bit too hard to try and close up to the Toro Rosso drive, but it's just about held on to it. Has got a lot of change positions, I think, because the two racing points, in fact, double stacking. So it's a little bit of a disaster there for them. But so Luke Bailey's chasing Cryptox. But as you were saying, no, I completely understand that. I think Sam Pito knows he's got a 4.6 second gap behind, and I'm sure he knows that Charlie did pick up quite a lot of penalties last night. Sam knows if he can just maybe keep it clean, he might not necessarily have to pass the Alfa Romeo to even get the win tonight. And be interesting if he can just look after his tyre as well. You see Luke Bailey looking like he's got a much better exit than the Renault Cryptox, and he moves himself up into P8. But it will be interesting, of course, when the seconds. Oh, the McLaren drive goes very wide at the next chicane of turn 9. But be interesting what the leaders do in terms of when they pit for their second time. Of course, those mediums will not get them to the end of the race. And looks like Roy Boy is just about, despite a little mistake, has kept inside the DRS zone of Scott Bugner. And Scott Bugner is now moving 2.7 seconds behind Nitrogas, pitting on the same lap, both 8-lap-old mediums. And it looks like, despite battling with the Haas, it looks like it is coming down slightly. I think it's just come down a second in the last few laps. So there is a real opportunity for Scott. I know he has got, I think he's got at least one 3-second time penalty, and I don't think Nitrogas has at the moment. So he knows he's got a little bit of work to do. But right now, if he can get his head down, potentially drop this Haas behind him, as the gap is now hovering between 9/10 of a second to a second, he could potentially put himself back in the chance of a podium here after not a great qualifying session.
Yeah, quite a good chance as well. As we see, Meg Luppy has left the session. He must have some sort of connection issue there, because he's still out on track there. He was running well in 6th place, so some issue there. Hopefully Meg can get back into the session. Just keeping an eye on Scopefield. He's in 9th place. He's in the top 10 now. He's on 14 lap medium tyres, so expect him to be coming into the pit soon for another set of tyres. But Scopefield, he can't be disheartened, can he? He's in this Williams car. He was always going to find it tough around here, and I think anywhere inside the top 10 tonight for him would be seen as a good result. Unfortunately, his title rival, like we say, Sam, is way up the road, and Scopefield just has to try and hope that cars ahead of him pick up penalties as well, and he has the opportunity then to make up places. But the moment Scopefield is struggling somewhat, but still inside the top 10.
As Weimark getting very close to that pit wall, but it does move past Meg Lugby. I think, not sure if Meg Lugby's back in the session yet. Meanwhile, Simon Palmer and his McLaren on those hard tyres, going to the end, I'm sure. Gets past Joss in the Williams and puts himself back into P13. He knows he's got a little bit of time to make if he wants to get himself back in the points, as the winners Joss just had to take a little bit of a look there into turn 1, but thinks better of it. As Meg Lugby is back in the session, I'm sure he won't be at all pleased to see he has lost the position. He's got a little bit of work to do now.
Yeah, that's always frustrating. I've had that happen to me. Unfortunately, you lose connection to the race after having a good race, and suddenly find yourself losing a couple of positions and find yourself way down. Because if you look now, he's already 2.4 seconds behind Rimac, so a lot of work for him to be done there. But just looking further ahead, Charlie is having a good race so far, and he's now got a 2-second lead over Sam. But like you pointed out, Charlie did pick up quite a few penalties last night, so I think subconsciously that'll be in the back of his mind. Well, there you go. There you go. I speak and it shall happen. Unfortunately for FPL Charlie, he has picked up 3-second time penalty. But what Charlie is doing right now is he's building that gap. And if he can keep steadily building that gap, it's around 2 seconds now. If he can build it to over 3 seconds, it can nullify that 3-second time penalty. So the moment he's still in a good position here to win the race. He's just got to keep eking that time up.
Absolutely. Right now his pace is more than good enough with still about 17 racing laps to go for these guys. He's got the pace that seems to be more than good enough to try and eke out a 3-second gap to Samu Papito, and of course there's still plenty of time for Samu to pick up a penalty of himself. But I'm sure if he's on the phone to his engineer and realises that Charlie has got this penalty, I'm sure he'll suddenly adapt his game, maybe he'll be a little bit more sensible, and instead of trying to fight him on track, I'm sure he'll be trying to fight to be within 3 seconds and try and win it that way. I'm sure if he wants to try and win it the smartest he can. It's no, Roy Boy having a little bit of a disconnection problem, so it's very bad luck for the two Haas drivers, as Scott and Roy Boy both come into the pits, and so does Sam. So Sam is trying to undercut to try and recoup some of the gap to the Alfa Romeo driver. This could be a critical point of the race for him. Looks like he should come out just about in clear air. It was a bit unlucky for Scott. He might have a slightly slower pit stop there, of course, probably not realising that Sam came into the pits. But where does the Tailwater driver come out? He's going to come up side by side with the Alfa Romeo of Rimac and just about squeezes ahead of him. And that is absolutely crucial. Just half a second slower on his in-lap, and he's right behind the Alfa Romeo, and the undercut is effectively flawed. But he's in a good position now. If he can try and pit into perhaps purple first, second and last sectors, he really could be in a position to try and take that gap down from 2 seconds to probably a lot closer.
Yeah, I agree. Like you say, that was absolutely crucial to get ahead of that Alfa Romeo. Previous pit stops, FPL Charlie was just slightly behind a Renault, and eventually it did work out for him, but ultimately did cost him. So FPL Charlie now does come into the pit lane, doesn't want to pick up a speeding penalty, he doesn't pick up a speeding penalty, so perfect for him there. You'd imagine, no, Nitrogas doesn't come into the pits either, so Nitrogas is staying out on those medium tyres, the Mercedes driver. Nice pit stop there for FPL Charlie. Now where does this put Sam and Charlie? Sam now coming up to the start finish line now, he's just about to cross the line. FPL Charlie, this is so frustrating when you're just trundling out of the pit lane, you want to be going, and it's going to be ever so close, but FPL Charlie just about stays ahead of Sam. But like you say, that 2 second gap has gone down significantly. It's only half a second now, and all that work Charlie needs to do now has to be done again for this second half of the race.
As Roy Boy will rejoin the session, I'm sure that'll be very good news for him. Again, he's lost probably just a little bit of time to Scott. He's now 3.4 seconds behind that Taro Rosso driver, so a bit of good news there for the Taro Rosso man. And I'm sure he'll be pretty pleased to see that Nitrogas is staying out. Of course, he's racing Nitrogas for that final podium spot, but he has got a couple of seconds to negotiate with as Slam Palmer picks up another 3 seconds, so it's going to be a very hard night for him to try and get any points. But the undercut working just as well for Sam as it did for Charlie in that first stint. It seems same sort of gap in the first stint when it came to the first round of pit stop. Sam had the advantage of around about 2 seconds, and Charlie came about half a second behind. But already Charlie just stretching his legs a little bit, and it's 8/10 of a second, and Sam's nowhere near really close enough to really make the move on this occasion at least. And but Charlie will have a little bit of faith knowing that he did have the better pace on the medium tyres in the previous stint, and of course he has got 1 lap better tyres than the Spaniard for the remaining laps, so he has got all the motivation he needs to try and eke out this gap, this 3 second gap at least. And of course, we're just saying there's plenty of time for Sammy to pick up a penalty of his own. Of course, Rimac in P3, he's going to have to pit again at some point. Of course, he's on lap old medium tyres, and of course Luke Bailey, who's just following up just a few seconds behind as well. And Nitrogas does come out the pits, and he's been just come out pits just behind the Haas of Meglupi, and only just ahead of Scott Buckner. So Scott really could potentially move himself up into, at least for now, a podium position if he can make this move stick.
It was very close. I was keeping an eye on Nigel because we've got a yellow flag in sector. Lozak has retired from the session. Unfortunately, it's been a tough race for him. But yeah, I was keeping an eye on Nigel coming out of the pit, and you could see the Toro Rosso just trying all he can to try and get past that Mercedes. And unfortunately, it was very similar with FPL Charlie and Sam. And unfortunately, Scott just didn't quite get the jump on him. But here comes Nigel now, the Mercedes power versus the Haas, and you imagine this is going to be easy work for Nigel down the back straight just before the chicanes. Meglupi pits, in fact. Meglupi straight into the pit lane, and Scott is now on the hunt to try and keep up with Nigel. It'll be a big task to keep up with that Mercedes power, but I'm sure Scott will be giving his all. He's just about half a second behind Nigel at the moment.
Yep, absolutely trying, locked on to the back of the Mercedes. Of course, it will be a very difficult car to pass in that Toro Rosso Honda. Of course, just using the track limits all the way to the maximum there through turns 3 and 4. He knows he wants to try and stay well up in his DRS, but if he can't get the move done just yet, he'll surely look a little bit further up the road, and they see the McLaren of Luke Bailey, and even further up the road, the Alfa Romeo of Rimac, who are still yet to pit again. So he could hope those bit of traffic could play into his favour if he just struggles to get past the Mercedes just a little bit on top speed. As the gap between the top two again just sort of shaking and flexing between 9/10 of a second to a second. Looks like Sam's doing just about enough to stay in the DRS zone of the Alfa Romeo, but it doesn't seem like he has quite enough pace to try and catch back up to the Alfa. He's got a yellow flag at the back there. I think that might is that Schofield, or is that? I think it's I think it's the Williams of Joss, who looks like he's now minus a front wing end plate. So it's a really, really frustrating day, it seems, for the two Haas boys. As Schofield, of course, number 2 in the Drivers' Championship, currently sat in P15, and he's all over the back of O'Stephen. It's been a real frustrating night for him. Did well to wrestle his car up into P8 for qualifying, but hasn't gone all right since. I think he picked up early damage because, of course, the early pit stop onto the medium tyres, and since then, and I think a wing change for him, and since then he's dropped back, and he's really been stuck in this end of the midfield battle, but he is going to get the move done on the Red Bull into the final chicane.
Right now, we've got a battle for P4. Luke Bailey's struggling a little bit on, as Joss picks up a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Luke Bailey's struggling a little bit on those 9-lap medium times. Got a yellow flag in. It's Joss has unfortunately retired from the session, last week's race winner. But yeah, Luke Bailey's struggling on 9-lap medium tyres. He's fallen back a little bit into the clutches of Nigel Gash, and Scott is being dragged along as well. And fortunately, Luke Bailey is going to be a bit of a sitting duck here in his Haas car. Nigel Gash has just got an easy move done on the Haas, and it looks like a relatively easy move is going to be done now on the McLaren as well, as Nigel Gash puts a car between him and Scott, and bloody hell, that was I had to hold my breath there. I thought there was going to be a humongous crash then. Jesus, and Scott just about, he's such an entertainer that he nearly took my breath away there, and Scott just about gets the move done, and Luke Bailey really is struggling on those tyres. I don't think he quite expected the Toro Rosso car to come along with the Mercedes driver as well, and it might have just surprised him somewhat, and Scott does eventually get the move done. It was crucial really for Scott, wasn't it, because Scott wants to keep on to the back of Nigel Gash and keep on the tail to try and claim any potential chance of a podium, but he did lose out some time in that, and he's down now to 1.4 seconds.
I think he's almost sending you into a cardiac arrest coming up that final chicane there. Always entertaining. Of course, he knew he wanted to make that move done as soon as he could. He got in the DRS zone of Nitro. He was all over the back. He could smell a podium place, but I'm just looking at his front wing end plate, and I think the damage might have been done in trying to get that move done early on the McLaren, because I think he might be minus a front wing end plate on that left side, and now dropped 1.5 seconds behind Nitro Gas as well. And of course, with a lack of downforce, as we were saying earlier, a damaged front wing round here is very bad news on a street circuit, and there's further evidence of it. The lack of downforce and just going a little bit too much on that second curve. He's picked up another 3 seconds, and I mean, I'm beginning to lose count, Sab, if I'm honest, but I mean, he could be on. He's still sat in 4th position. He's quite a comfortable 4th position, but if Roy Boy's kept it clean, it could drop a whole host of positions yet. And of course, with damaged front wing as well, Roy Boy will begin to close up with him, and it could be a victim of more penalties at the moment. It
could indeed, but I'm just looking at Rimac right now. We've got a virtual safety car. We have a virtual safety car. I'm not sure why. Are we Simon? Is it Simon Palmer? I'm not.
I think one of them. I think Simon Palmer's gone potentially into the Wall of Champions. I can just see him on the. I can't view him. I'm just seeing him viewed on the track map, and it looks like just on the exit of all the champions. So I think Simon Palmer might have just been the victim of that, I think.
Yeah, I'm just riding on board with those, Stephen, now, and yes, you're right. The McLaren is facing the completely wrong way. He's hit the wall of champions, and unfortunately for Simon Palmer, that is race over. And unfortunately for himself, it's just been a bit of a disaster for him. A race took out of his hands early on by the Racing Point, and he's never been really able to recover from that. But we do have a virtual safety car still. The McLaren has been recovered, so I imagine the virtual safety car will be ending as soon as possible, really. FPL Charlie, I'm just looking ahead, is it's got a 1.1 second lead, but Sam, and there we go, we're back underway now, but Charlie must have been caught out massively by that virtual safety car, not realising it's gone to green, because it was 1.2 seconds. Sam is now only half a second behind Alfa Romeo, so Charlie must have just been sleeping ever so slightly, and that is allowed Sam to get onto the back of Alfa Romeo and will eventually pick up DRS. So a bit of unfortunate section there for Charlie, because he did start to eke out that lead, and now he's going to have to do it all over again.
Of course, it's so difficult with VSC, not just on this circuit, just anywhere on this game. It fluctuates so quickly. You can be far half a second in the green, and suddenly it goes down into the red. You've got to be so on the limit, particularly when you see safety car ending. You've got to be really on it. And of course, you can be unfortunate, of course, what part of the circuit you catch the ending sign. And it seems like you're saying just maybe a little bit too much in the green, maybe just napping just a little bit. Because you now see Luke Bailey sending it down the inside of Ferocious Dan, and Wymack and Luke Bailey on brand new soft tyres with just about 8 laps to go. These two could really be two to watch. They've got a little bit of time to make up, but Luke Bailey in P8 right now, Wymack in P6. They've got a little bit of gap to make, but if they kept it clean and penalties, and with the pace they're going to have from these soft tyres in the closing stages, they could be on for a really good haul of points here, the pair of them. And of course Charlie as well is just going to try, and he's got to gap back up to about 8-9 tenths of a second, but of course does have that 3-second time penalty, which Samu is still yet to pick up himself. So it could be a really tough race for the Alfa Romeo driver. He's got about 8 laps to try and make some sort of gap and make some sort of dent to try and shake him out of his DRS zone, but Samu's doing exactly what he needs. Seems to have much better pace in this second stint on the medium tyres compared to the previous, but Charlie has got that 1 lap better tyres, and that will come to his advantage, I'm sure, especially later on in the races. Luke Bailey's got so much more grip coming out of turns 3 and 4, there's around turn 5, and he knows just on the other side of this turn 6 and 7 chicane he will have the DRS zone. Of course, this is where just a lap ago he put the move on the Racing Point, and it looks like he's going to go down the inside on the Haas driver of Meg Lubbe, and it takes the move quite nicely, all the grip in the world, turns in, and looks like he's got the job done, and he just knows he's got to get a good exit out of the hairpin, and it looks like he should be away.
Yeah, right, and Rimac as well on those soft tyres is reeling in Roy Boy at a rate of knots at the moment on those soft tyres. 5.7 seconds now. Roy Boy, I believe, does have some time penalties. I can't remember seeing Rimac having penalties, so there's potential a top 5 finish here for Rimac. He looks after these tyres well, doesn't pick up any penalties, and Rimac's got a good opportunity to score well here. But as you were pointing out with Scott earlier, with that front wing damage, and it's really starting to hurt him now. 3.2 seconds behind Nitrogas. But crucially for Scott, Roy Boy isn't really making up time on him. Roy Boy's still around 8-second mark, and I believe Scott has only got 6 seconds worth of time penalty. If that's the case, Scott will still finish it ahead of Roy Boy. So Roy Boy really needs to start getting his skates on, try and find 2 seconds to Scott so he can overhaul him at the end of the race. But I'm not sure if Roy Boy might have 3 or 6 seconds, I'm not sure as well. So Scott could still finish in the top 4 here if he can look after that car with that front wing damage.
As riding aboard the leaders, and once again Charlotte just cannot shake the tail also of Samuel Pepito. It just seems to be just shadowing the Alfa Romeo, just move to move in these closing laps now, just 6 racing laps to go, and of course he knows that not only he doesn't have to get the move done on track. I'm sure by this point he is well aware of the time penalty for the Alfa Romeo driver. He doesn't need to get it done on track, and he knows as long as he stays well within that DRS zone, it's going to be very hard for the Alfa Romeo driver to realistically shake him and to get a 3-second gap. But of course a mistake could come from anyone and anywhere on this track. Of course we've seen that many times, and it's very easy. Just a little bit of a lapse in concentration in any one of these corners, just chip your front wing slightly. Of course, even coming under this bridge here for the chicane of rounds 8 and 9, just that outside wall there on the left hand side could really clip that if you just dip concentration just a little bit. And well, that would be more than a front wing, that could even be a wheel. But Samuel Pepito just doing what he needs to do, as you're saying, quite rightfully, perhaps just playing a championship game, thinking in see probably just maybe even make out on the track map whereabouts his championship rival Scopefielder is, who's done a good job to recover a couple of positions. He's now back up into P11, and but he's got a 10-second gap to get into the top 10, and of course Mercedes or Spud as well is ahead of him, so it won't be an easy pass at all. But so it looks like maybe a bit of a scruffy lap from Papito. So he's now just about a second behind, and but Charlie wants to break that 3-second gap now. He's got to bolt really about now.
He has indeed, and I was just looking through the racing instance while he was talking there, and Sam only has one warning on his cards at the moment, so Sam is looking comfortable at the minute. He's keeping within DRS, and with only 4 laps remaining. Fortunately for Charlie, I think that virtual safety car has probably cost him any chance of really stretching his legs, because whenever he can try and get it into that second mark, Sam then finds just enough time to get back with under a second and allow him to stick with that DRS. And at the moment, Sam keeping it very clean, just riding on board with him now. He's making sure he just has to get that car home now. No silly mistakes. He knows he locks up into the hairpin there, but nothing too drastic. Lost a few tenths there, 1.2 seconds now, but yeah, nothing too drastic now from Sam for the last four laps, and Sam will have this under wraps, but anything can happen around this track within 4 laps.
So, for the first time, it looks like it does not have DRS on the F1 driver, which perhaps he might have maybe a little bit more pressure applied to him now, as he knows he doesn't have that comfort zone of DRS. As the gap now 1.4 seconds. So he's saying if Charlie wants to bolt, he's got to bolt about 1.6 second gap to the Teros driver, and he's got to do it in only 4 laps. So he's going to have to drive 4 sensational laps if he wants to try and take home the race win tonight. But Sam, of course, has no slouch. He's now 12 seconds clear of his teammate Nitrogas in the Mercedes, and Scott is just about hanging on to 4th place. Well, of course, he might drop a position or 2 anyway through penalties, but he's now 4 seconds behind Mercedes after shadowing him through the traffic of Luke Bailey and Rimac. But of course, that damaged front wing has really cost him the chance of place, at least on track for tonight. But he's still on for a good roll of points. If he could, hopefully for him, he's sort of managing the gap from Roy Boy. It was from about 9 seconds. He's lost 3 seconds in the last 8 or 9 laps. So it's not coming down a great deal. So he's doing well considering the damage of that front wing. As you can see now, the gap was 1.8 seconds. So Sammy Papito is going to have to try and pick up the pace a little bit, because Charlie, now he's broken that DRS sign, is just really beginning to threaten the Terosso of potentially breaking that 3-second gap, as it's now about 1.8. And of course, it's got about 3 laps to do it in. But each lap, the further he pulls away, the more pressure is going to be put on the Spaniard's shoulders.
It really is, and that's where mistakes can be creeping in. You can find yourself trying to push even harder to try and keep up within the reaches of the leader. But just looking further down, it looks like maybe the soft-running guys are just starting to struggle on their tyres now. Luke Bailey is not really getting away from Meg Luppy, and Rimac, he is reeling in, Roy Boy, but it's a lot slower than it was, so maybe that soft tyre now is probably going to keep them sat where they are, around the 4.5 second mark to Roy Boy and Luke Bailey, just about 2.2 seconds ahead of Meg Luppy. So those soft tyres probably will see them out nicely to the end of the race, but unfortunately for them, I think they've probably got the best out of them now.
As Verstappen pulls into the pits and even retires from the race, I believe he's just running just about inside the top 10. So strange decision from the Racing Point driver, but nevertheless he is out of this race. And of course the gap now just hovering about 2 seconds from FPL Charlie to Semi Papito with just about 2 laps to go. So it's really only going to be a mistake from the Spaniards to lose this race win. He's just got to stay within 3 seconds of the Englishman if he wants to claim home victory and really enforce the championship lead. I'm just, as you're saying, going back to the point there, the 2 soft runners of Rimac and Luke Bailey. Rimac doesn't seem, as you're saying, to make the progress he perhaps needs, and it looks like Luke Bailey's beginning to catch up his fellow soft runners. Charlie now just probably pushing just that little bit too hard, and I think that might be good night Vienna.
Yeah, unfortunately for Charlie, it was just about around the 2 second mark, wasn't he? And like you say, that is pretty much game over now. Sam will surely be getting the word from his engineer that Charlie's picked up another 3 second time penalty. Sam just needs to bring it home now. He's got a comfortable lead over his teammate in 3rd place, 12 seconds. He can see the Alfa Romeo driver there just coming out of the hairpin. He knows now that just needs to bring it home. This final lap coming up and the race will be his. Sam will thoroughly deserve it in the end. He had a superb qualifying and he's drove superbly again tonight. He's kept it very clean, and sometimes that's all you need to do is just keep it clean, and you can find yourself scoring very good points or even a race winner. And you can see now FPL Charles still around 1.7 mark, but unfortunately now he leads into the final lap. We'll know that this race win is just going to go out his grass, but crucially for him, you would imagine, unless there's a mistake, he will probably finish at least second place.
Yeah, a good podium is at least assured for the Alfa Romeo driver, even if it's in the top set Pete so desperately craves. You see only 13 runners left down the grid, and see Luke Bailey just making inroads, just lap after lap, just seems to be maybe a little bit kinder to the soft tyres to that of Rimac, because he just seems to have pulled him back a little bit in his final stages. That McLaren driver just getting ever so closer, and the Alfa Romeo might just have to go defensive come this last lap, because it looks like he's just struggling a little bit, as Meg Glubby's a further 2 seconds behind, so at least won't have to worry about that, and the gap between himself and Roy Boy has even begun to stretch up the last couple of laps, so I think his soft tyres are well past their best. Of course, even in the late stage of the grid, when you have less fuel in the car, you can make these tyres just eke them out that little bit longer. It should be a little bit easier to manage, but coming through this DRS zone here is comfortably safe, but he knows he's got to get a good exit. But of course, he's now right on board with FPL Charlie. He's driven a fantastic race to get himself up into first position, but he knows when Papito crosses the line, he will move down into second place. So it's a really nice race win for the Spaniard. His 4th win of the season. Congratulations to him. He has firmly grasped in his hand the championship, but it's not all over yet. Scope has got himself up into P10, so he's had a bit of a recovery. A fantastic drive from Nitrograss. P2, he drops 1 position, but it does really nice. And of course, in terms of the constructors, for Sam and Nitrograss, that would mean a fabulous result. Scott comes across the line P4. Let's have to see if Roy Boy does not in fact demote in tandem position. Roy Boy must have penalties of his own, as in fact so many so that Rimac claims P5, and Luke Bailey then drops down to P7. Meg Glubby finishes across the line in P8 as Spud on 25 lap old Haas. I'm sure he'll be very pleased to get rid of them as he comes across now through the last chicane past the Wall of Champions. He's going to claim 9th position unless penalties demotes him behind Scope. As they come across the line, there's no Scope, rounds out the top 10, and the 2 Renaults are just about to push themselves over the start finish line, as it looks like Hulkenberg will leave from Cryptox just there, and I think it might have been one of the last runners, as we lost quite a few cars there towards the end. Only 13 finishes in the end, and it was a real interesting race, Scott, Sab, as we saw the undercut come into effect for both our race leaders. Of course, worked in the favour of Charlie initially, but that they came back in the favour of Sam. But of course, as we predicted so many times, it's just the track extension limits, and really did come back to haunt Charlie, because he seemed to have the pace there.
Yeah, unfortunately, track limits did eventually cost him. It's a shame, really, because I always personally like to see a good battle. Forget all the penalties, a good battle, and see who gets it across the line. But track limits are there for a reason, and unfortunately, Charlie has paid the price. But I'm sure he'll be happy with it. He's on the podium. He will have probably enjoyed the race, I imagine, but just a little frustrated that those penalties have cost him a race win tonight. But overall, we've had, I think, a decent race. We had some great overtakes from a few people down into the hairpin, and we also had a few mishaps as well, shall we call them, as well. So overall, it was a nice race, and a pleasure to be on the commentary team with yourself tonight, as we're just getting some of the guys into the commentary booth now, just waiting on FPL Charlie. I just want to know if you want to kick it off with our tonight's race winners. We wait on Charlie.
Absolutely, of course. Make sure you've got your voice too allowed to be shared, guys, as we just wait for Charlie. But I'll start off with Sammy Papito. Congratulations, Sam. Your 4th win of the season. It seems to be one of the more harder ones, but in the end, just by keeping it clean, you seem to have Charlie pipped there on penalties.
Yes. Yeah, I'm very happy. Another win. This one was really tough because, in my opinion, I didn't have the advantage of the pace advantage. I think Charlie was a bit quicker. So yeah, in the end, I was trying to just keep it clean, keep it in the DRS zone, because I was seeing him go away, and also I was losing so much on the straights. and yeah, and I was on the limit every lap, and yeah, it feels good.
Of course, and I'd like to go back to the first stint on the mediums. Was you pretty worried? Of course, obviously Charlie did the undercut on you initially in the first round of pit stop, so he closed that massively. Then, of course, then overtook you, and he seemed to be very confident in that second stint. But the first stint, you seemed to be a lot better on those medium tyres. You was able to manage the gap to Charlie a lot better and stay within the 3 second.
Yes, as you said, the undercut was the key here, because otherwise he would have pulled off, and the undercut just gave me the DRS on him and the slipstream. And yeah, and Charlie was driving brilliantly, to be honest. He was really quick. It was really hard to keep with him, and yeah, and I'm very happy also with Nitro. Some very good points for the constructors, so yeah, I'm very happy.
And of course, talk about the constructors, but also the drivers. You see, Scopefield, of course, he was in the Williams tonight. Seemed to have quite a tough race with it. I think he finished down in P10, so you've gained quite a substantial amount of points on him. Do you think now this championship is only yours to lose?
Yeah, pretty much. I just need to keep it clean on the next 3 races, and I think I'll be alright. Of course, it's not done, but yeah, I'm feeling confident.
Good. And I'll move on to P2, Charlie. Seemed like you had a nice, good battle again today. You moved once again, really nice, smooth race from qualifying. As crossed the line P1, but just seemed to be just penalties again. But you must be really pleased, because you seemed like you did have maybe just a smidge of pace more than Sam today.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what this track's like. You take the same line lap in, lap out, and then 1 millimetre to the left or the right, and it's a warning. So, I mean, I'm not bothered. I know the guy behind me was using a line to tell him where to go, so he wouldn't pick any up. But yeah, no, it was a good race. I had the pace on him. Just needed to get the move done. Use the undercut strategically to get near him, because he dropped me at the start, and then just moved my way past from there and took control, really.
Yeah, it was really good, and of course the way you negotiated traffic as well, when of course you came with the undercut, as you say, really used strategically well, came out just behind Samuel Papito, and of course used the traffic well to eventually move past him. When you saw him come in and use, obviously I'm sure he was well aware that the undercut would of course do him the same sort of advantage did you. Did you feel like you had the pace to try and claw? Obviously, you picked up 6 seconds in the end, which I assume was just pushing to try and get that 3 second gap. But do you think if you perhaps try and drop the DRS zone of Samu, you could would have won tonight?
I knew he would come out close to me. I thought I had a 2 second gap before I pitted, so I thought that would just be enough to cover it. And I knew how I had from that previous stint. I knew I had a pace advantage towards the end of the stint, so I thought maybe I can get it there, but. No, it's just he was obviously pushing really hard, as he says. I mean, I don't think I was pushing over the limit. It's just you try and keep it so neat, and for 35 laps and not get any warnings is just too hard. So I think that's what cost me the win.
Yeah, definitely 35 laps, and of course, particularly that last chicane as well can be a real bugger. But congratulations, really nice result from you today. I'll move on to third place, Nitrogas. Congratulations. You had an immense qualifying position. Of course, you had a really nice race, pretty clean. Looked like you was on your own for a lot of it, but especially towards the end. But at least in terms of constructors, I think you two are now set in a really strong position.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect to qualify there. Obviously, I messed up the other 2 laps before that, and then just managed to get one clean one in at the end. And I was quite happy. I thought Sam might pit me, but and then at the start I just wanted him to get away because I know how quick he is, and I got alongside him into the first corner, and I was like, no, I could like go down the inside there and try and overtake him, but I thought if I let him go, see if he can pull away, and then he did, and then Charlie was right on my tail, and I don't know, I just didn't really feel very good on the softs. It was just, I don't know, I didn't really have a very good feel for him, but yeah, after that, yeah, it was pretty alone until the pit stop, and then Scott was catching me up on the first set of mediums, and then he undercut on the pit, and I just got out in front of him, and then that was quite close for a little while until I managed to get somebody down the back straight, and I think he got stuck behind him, and I broke his DRS, and then yeah, that was it. I was just in free air then, really, trying not to make any mistakes from then on. Just trying to get points for the constructors, because as I put in the site, I've never won anything, so it'd be nice to win something.
Yeah, so of course, as you're saying, it got an absolute electric start. I thought he was going to take the lead, to be honest, but it was very, very close. And of
I
course,
know,
maybe
yeah,
if
so
it was,
did I, and then I thought, hang on a minute now, don't do that.
if it was anyone other than your teammate, do you reckon you would have come out of turn 1 and 2 in the lead, or?
Yeah, I would have probably stuck it in there. I would have, yeah, I backed off a bit because I knew it was Sam there, and I thought, in the end of the day, he's definitely a faster racer than me, so I was going to try and hang on to him for as long as possible until we could pull away as a pair. But yeah, Charlie was just too quick. So.
And one final question, of course, you also racing F3 tomorrow night. Can we see you near the front? Do you reckon tomorrow is this a circuit you enjoy well?
I enjoyed the circuit, but it's like I said in the on the website. I've set it up so it's not mega fast, but it's nice and stable. I'm not like worried about any oversteer moments or anything. I mean, I didn't get any penalties. I think I got one warning, so I'm in a groove with this track. I know where I am, but so I think if some people fall out and there's some incidents, I might make some moves, but it's all consistency with me in a minute.
That's a very good point there. And of course, we'll move one last question back to Samu. You said the championship you've admitted now is in your hands. You're feeling very good. You know, just got to keep it clean. Of course, are you perhaps a little bit worried that, of course, there are two of the circuits left of street tracks, Singapore and Monaco, that if there was perhaps potentially two tracks where you could, just one mistake as DNF, you seem to have like got them up coming up. Do you think you're good enough on those tracks to maybe not make a mistake and bring home the championship? Sam? No, he's gone. He's gone.
He fell asleep during my answer.
He's gone for a siesta, I think. No, thank you very much, boys. Cheers for that one. Sab, anything to add?
Well, I think overall tonight it's been a strong night for Sam and his teammate with Nitric Gas as well. Both of them finishing on the podium. It's looking very strong now for Sam to try and take this championship. But like you've just said, we've got two street circuits still to come up, and he only takes one mistake, and suddenly the title shift can go back towards Schofield there. But in terms of the constructors, it is looking likely now that this team will claim the constructors title, and after tonight I'd say thoroughly so. They've deserved it from what I've seen of them, and they've looked very racy. But yeah, it was a fun race to watch, and it was a pleasure to be on this commentary team yet again this evening.
Yeah, it's been really nice to have you alongside me, Sam, and obviously a little bit makeshift last minute, but who knows, maybe we'll do another chance later on. But of course, realistic performances every Tuesday night. Of course, that is normally brought to you by Malc and Tim. I'm sure those two will be back next week, 8 PM, live on YouTube for round 10 at Singapore. That'll be. Of course, Wednesday night, that's tomorrow night, 8 PM. Got the F2 League and F3. They're running parallel live here on YouTube. That's Dan and James for F2. Myself and Charlie will bring you the F3 round 9 Canada tomorrow night. And of course, the Export League, that runs Sunday night. Is 9:30 PM, twitch.tv/Invictus Racing League. And of course, Monday, that is always brought to you Monday, 8 PM, F1 Equal League by Gareth and Sab. And of course, you can find us on all the socials at Invictus Racing League for Instagram, at Invictus RL, that is our Twitter, and of course Facebook, and of course on our site you can find news, photo albums, Hall of Fame, interviews with all the driver statistics and all your favourites. And of course, if you haven't already, subscribe and give a thumbs up if you enjoyed. And one last thank you again to Sab for coming alongside me tonight in the last minute, and I'm sure we'll see Malc and Tim back here next week. But I very much hope you enjoyed, and have a very good evening.